I sat in the career counselor's office. My palms were sweaty. The clock ticked loudly, each second echoing in the silence. It felt like Judgment Day, the weight of my future pressing down on me. Mrs. Thompson smiled at me, but her eyes held expectations, a silent demand for answers I didn't have.
"So, what do you want to do with your life?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm.
The question hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea. My mind raced, searching for an answer. How could I? I was only 17, still figuring out who I was. The world seemed so big and I felt so small, like a tiny speck in an endless universe. I mumbled something about maybe becoming a doctor or a lawyer. Those seemed like respectable choices. Those were safe choices, right? Mrs. Thompson nodded, her pen poised over her notepad. She scribbled notes on her pad, her eyes flicking up to meet mine occasionally. I wondered what she was writing. Was it about my uncertainty? Was she judging me? Did she think I was directionless? Lost? My thoughts spiraled. I felt my chest tighten, the anxiety building up inside me. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. I wanted to run away, to escape this overwhelming pressure, to hide from this decision that felt too big, too important for me to make. She started listing colleges and programs and internships. It was overwhelming, a flood of information. I nodded along, pretending to understand, but my mind was a blur. I left the office feeling more lost than ever, the weight of the future still pressing down on me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The meeting with Mrs. Thompson replayed in my mind, over and over, like a broken record. I tossed and turned, the sheets tangled around me, trapping me. Just like I felt trapped by this decision, my parents' voices echoed in my head. You need a stable career. Think about your future. But what about my present? I stared at the ceiling. Shadows danced across it, mocking me. What if I made the wrong choice? What if I ended up hating my job, stuck in a life I didn't want? The thought terrified me. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. One wrong step and I'd fall into a future I didn't recognize. Morning came. I hadn't slept a wink. My mum knocked on the door.
"Time to get up."
Her voice was cheerful. I dragged myself out of bed. It happened on a Tuesday, just another ordinary day. Or so I thought. I was walking home from school, my head down, lost in thought. That's when I saw it. A glint in the corner of my eye. I looked up. There, in a shop window, was a mirror. But not just any mirror. This one seemed different. I stepped closer. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't quite right. The me in the mirror looked confident, happy, like she knew something I didn't. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but the image didn't change. The shop looked abandoned, dusty and forgotten, but the mirror shone like new. Without thinking, I pushed open the door. A bell jingled. The sound echoed in the empty space. I approached the mirror. I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror, about the me I saw in it. She haunted my dreams, followed me through my days. I found myself wondering, who was she? What did she know that I didn't? The old woman's words echoed in my mind. As you truly are. Was that really me? I started paying attention to the little voice inside, the one that got drowned out by expectations, by shoulds and musts. It was quiet at first, but it grew stronger. It whispered of adventures, of roads not taken, of a life lived on my own terms. I began to listen, really listen. The mirror me became a symbol of possibility, of potential. I'd catch glimpses of her, in windows, in puddles, always smiling, always free. She beckoned me, challenged me. It hit me one morning, like a bolt of lightning. I couldn't keep living for others. I had to find my own path. The realization was both liberating and terrifying. My parents wouldn't understand. Mrs. Thompson would be disappointed. But I knew, deep in my bones, this was right. Eve's father. What do you mean a gap year? You've got your whole future ahead of you. I made a plan. It was crazy, reckless even, but it felt true. I would take a gap year, travel, explore, learn about the world and myself. No more safe choices, no more expected paths. It was time to listen to that quiet voice inside, the one that had been there all along. Eve's father, I just don't get it. Why now? Why this? Telling my parents was hard. There were tears, angry words, disappointment hung heavy in the air. But beneath it all, I sensed something else, a grudging respect. The world opened up before me, like pages in a book, each one filled with endless possibilities. Each day brought new adventures, new challenges. I felt alive more than ever before. I hiked mountains in Nepal, studied meditation in India. Each place had its own story to tell. Worked on a farm in New Zealand. The simplicity of farm life taught me patience and hard work. Every experience taught me something about the world, about myself. I discovered new passions and interests. I learned that I loved working with my hands. Creating something from nothing gave me immense satisfaction. That I had a talent for languages. Communicating with people in their native tongue opened up new worlds. That I could be brave when I needed to be. Courage became my constant companion. I made friends from all over the world, people with different beliefs, different dreams. Each one left a mark on my heart. They showed me that there were so many ways to live a life, so many ways to find joy and fulfillment, so many paths to happiness, each one unique, each one worth exploring. There were hard times too, moments of doubt, of homesickness, times when I felt lost and alone, times when I wondered if I'd made a huge mistake, if I was chasing an illusion. But then I'd remember the mirror, the reflection of who I was becoming, the me I'd seen there, stronger, wiser, more resilient. And I'd find the strength to keep going, to keep exploring, to keep growing. Every step forward was a step towards my true self. As the summer drew to a close, I realized I'd changed. The journey had transformed me, not just on the outside, but deep within, where it mattered the most. Coming home was strange. Everything looked the same, but I was different.
We noticed it too. The way you carried yourself, the confidence in your voice.
We sat down to talk, really talk, for the first time in years. I shared my experiences, my dreams, my fears.
To my surprise, we listened. Really listened.
There were tears and laughter and moments of deep understanding. They shared their own stories, of dreams they'd had at my age, of roads not taken. I saw them in a new light, not just as my parents, but as people, with their own hopes and regrets. We didn't agree on everything, but that was okay. We found a middle ground. They saw that I needed to find my own way, and I understood their concerns, their love. A few days later, I found myself back at the old shop. I don't know why. My feet just led me there. The mirror still stood in the window, shining, beckoning. The old woman appeared, as if by magic, her eyes still twinkling with that mischievous light.
You've changed.
It wasn't a question. I nodded. Words seemed inadequate.
The mirror shows us what we need to see, but the real magic, that's inside you. It always was.
Her words hit me like a revelation. The mirror hadn't changed me. It had simply shown me what was already there. We talked for hours. She shared stories of her own journey, of others who had found the mirror. Each tale was different, but they all had one thing in common: the courage to look inside, to face the truth of who they were and who they could be. That night, I sat on my roof, watching the stars come out one by one, illuminating the vast sky. Thinking about everything that had happened over the years, the twists and turns that brought me here. It all seemed so random, like a series of unconnected events. The meeting with Mrs. Thompson, finding the mirror in that old shop, my travels across continents. And yet somehow it all fit together perfectly. Like a grand design I was unaware of. Like pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know I was solving. I thought about serendipity, the happy accidents of life, how life has a way of giving us what we need, exactly when we need it, even if we don't see it at first. Even if we don't recognize it at the time, the universe has a way of aligning things. The mirror had appeared just when I needed it most, a beacon in my darkest hour, when I was lost, confused, and searching for meaning. It had shown me a possibility, a potential I hadn't considered before, and that had been enough to set me on my path, guiding me towards a new direction. But it wasn't just the big moments that mattered. It was the small ones too, like a conversation with a stranger on a bus in India, a wrong turn that led to a beautiful sunset in New Zealand, a moment of unexpected beauty, a book left behind by a previous traveler filled with notes and stories. Each one had taught me something valuable, leaving a lasting impact on my soul. Each experience had contributed to my growth, shaping who I am today, changed me in some small way, adding to the mosaic of my life. I realized that life isn't a straight line, but a winding path full of surprises and lessons. As I looked to the future, I felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nervousness, hope. I didn't have all the answers, and that was okay. I'd learned that it's not about knowing everything. It's about being willing to learn, to grow, to change. I thought about the me I'd seen in the mirror. She wasn't a fixed point to reach. She was a possibility, a potential always evolving, always changing, just like me. The journey of self-discovery doesn't end. It's a lifelong adventure, and I was ready for it. I made a promise to myself that night, to stay true to who I am, to keep exploring, to never stop learning, to embrace the unknown, because that's where the magic happens.